What's up, gifted family? Welcome to another episode of the show that is the GP YouTube. Just a reminder that if you support what we do here, make sure to go over to giftedperformance.com and sign up for our automated coaching service. For only $1 a day, you'll get access to 15 highly customized training programs, a macronutrient calculator, our meal planning feature that lets you build and save meals based on your macros, as well as access to our private Facebook group. All subscriptions help us in continuing to put out great content to get you to your fitness goals. Thanks for stopping by, and without any further delay, let's get into today's video. Enjoy.
Welcome back, guys. Another episode of the GPP, the Gifted Performance Podcast, where we give you the knowledge and practical takeaways to improve your own general physical preparedness. I am joined today by two people that you've seen on the podcast before. They don't need a lot of introduction. We've got Gunshow up top, and we've got Dr. Mike T. Just give the people a nice flex up top, and Mike, maybe just give them a nice wave.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful wave, sir. Ooh,
Okay.
The double-handed wave. I like that as well. And our guest of honor today, because we were told by our viewers that we needed to talk tactical physical therapy. So our podcast guest today is none other than Dr. Jason Mitchler. Jason, are you someone who enjoys the doctor? Because I feel like there's a real divide here. There's some people that don't call me doctor. That's a weird and it's too formal and it makes me uncomfortable. So before we go any further, is it no doc?
Yeah, I'm a no doc. My kids say that I'm a dinosaur.
Doc?
I'm a dinosaur doctor, they call me, so I'm not a real doctor anyway. So yeah, I'm a no doc though. So but
all right, perfect. I will try to not make you uncomfortable. But Jason is a doctor of physical therapy. He's the director of operations at the William J. pronunciation here. I'm going to go with Hybl. Hybl.
Yeah, that's common though. Hybl, yeah. So.
Close.
I would have guessed
The
Hybl.
Sports Medicine and Performance Center out in Colorado Springs. Got his DPT from Baylor University, like our good pal Michael over here. 10-year military vet, CrossFit Level 1 certification. Jason, did I miss anything? Any other?
No, actually, about 30 years of Army time. So, but
10.
yeah.
A 10. Where did I even get 10?
Yeah.
Typo of the year right there.
I came in
didn't
1989. Yeah, so probably before Mike was born. That's what
I didn't want to date you. So I want to give you a chance before we start any of our actual questions here to just go over anything that I may have missed. Tell us kind of the Jason Mitchler story. Who is Jason Mitchler? Where'd you get your start? How did you develop along your career? What do you do for fun? What's your favorite soup? And then maybe tell me what your favorite diet beverage is. We'll hit all the important boxes.
Okay. I'll see if I can get it all. So I was born in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is just outside of Green Bay. And the Packers are playing right now. So,
Sorry.
Yeah, but I moved to Colorado, North Denver when I was young, and I grew up there. I attended high school there, and then I attended the University of Northern Colorado and got a degree in kinesiology. And then after my freshman year, I joined the Army Reserves. So at that time, the reserves, they included combat arms. And so I was an infantry guy. And I was called up for Desert Storm in 91. And so I dropped out of school and I ended up going to Germany for, I think, 4 to 5 months. And then after that, I finished my degree. Afterwards, after college, I worked for the airlines. I worked as a personal trainer. I worked for a PT clinic because I thought I wanted to go to physical therapy school initially. And then when I was working at a clinic, a guy came in and he told me about the Special Forces 18 Delta program, Special Forces medic. And so I then enlisted in the Army. I went to Hawaii. I was with the 25th, various jobs there. I was with the Scout Platoon for most of the time. And from there, I went to Special Forces Selection. Went to Fort Bragg. I picked up as an 18 Delta, which is a medic, and then 2 years of schooling for there. And then I was assigned to 3rd Special Forces. After that, I did a few years with 3rd Special Forces. I actually got out of the Army completely. At that time, I was thinking I wanted to go to medical school. And so I started doing some prereqs, and I was working in an emergency room in Denver. And then I found out that the Army Baylor had a physical therapy program. And so kind of musculoskeletal has always been kind of my passion. And so I applied and I went to Army Baylor physical therapy program. And then after that, numerous assignments, most of them at Fort Carson, did a tour in Afghanistan as a PT. And then I retired in 2019. I was working as a contractor for 10 Special Forces as a physical therapist with the THOR3 program for roughly around 9 months. And when I got the director of operations job at Hybl. So I coach wrestling for one of the local high schools here. I'm big into jiu-jitsu. I like to mountain bike, ski, anything outside, and just like to work out. So,
Still doing any CrossFit?
Not too much. I've done the open 1 year, and so occasionally I'll do some. I'm kind of like a solo workout guy, and so I wasn't really into the whole gym thing, and so it's good. It's good stuff, though, you know.
All righty. So it seems like you've that was a very long progression there.
Yeah.
Started very young, fresh face in the Army, transition to Special Force medics, THOR3 implementation, now on to civilian life. So I think because we're going to spend a good amount of our time here talking about THOR3, maybe you can kind of just define what exactly that is.
Yeah, and so, it's been the program started in 2009, and so at that time I was at Fort Benning, and SOCOM was looking to start a human performance program, and they tasked USASOC, or Special Operations Command, with coming up with the THOR3 program. And so this all happened before I got there, but they were given a lot of money, and initially it was going to be this 5-year program, kind of this holistic, with the idea that we were going to mirror what professional sports did for their athletes, that we were going to treat tactical athletes or tactical soldiers like they were professional athletes. And so they brought in a lot of these D1 coaches, a lot of coaches from professional sports, a lot of this holistic stuff. And, we were just, barfed a ton of money, and we were just kind of told to run with the program. At the time, when I came over, the guy before me, Rich Westrick, he had developed a little bit. They had started to develop the program a little bit, but it was just all on paper. We had what the gym was going to look like, what the staff was going to look like. But at that time, as a group physical therapist, it was just me or just the PT kind of running for the whole group. And so it was a lot of different hats to wear. That was, obviously you're doing a lot of things. For me, I was trying to do a lot of things as best as I could, but you end up doing a lot of things just kind of poorly, just because you're running around so much, and then you're trying to take care of patients too for the group. And so, so that's kind of how THOR3 started out. The idea is going to be this holistic program that mirrored professional sports or mirrored D1 collegiate athletes.
So at the time that they started thinking and tossing around the idea of implementing some sort of really diverse, comprehensive care program that it did start out being an SF only thing, or was it intended to be broad?
Yeah, I mean, so I may be wrong, but it's a special operations thing. So that includes the Special Forces, the Rangers, the Task Force 160th guys, which are like the helicopter units. And then it also, I think MARSOC, the Marines, had a team. I think the only one that bowed out was the Air Force initially. And then the Navy had something else going on. They already had a little bit of a program. And so we actually got our human performance coordinator from one of the teams, one of the SEAL teams. And so they already had a program. So it wasn't necessarily part of the THOR3, I don't think. But yeah, so the Air Force, they've bought into it now. But initially, it was everybody but the Air Force that kind of bought into this. So Special Operations Command to include everybody and to include Special Forces.
Okay. And at this time, were you acting as a physical therapist in your Army role?
I was, yeah. So I was the group physical therapist at that time. Yeah.
And then bam, right in your lap, this huge, enormous, vague, maybe some sort of enormous, vague deal. Let's put this together, and it's gonna be multi-million dollars worth of development. Jason Mitchler, have fun.
Yeah, it really was like that. And, and I came in, and I felt like, I was only a year or two out of PT school, so my skills are fairly new, and yeah, it was a huge learning curve, and it was a lot of long hours, and yeah, it was pretty stressful. I drank a ton of Monsters, and I just lay awake at night, just stressed out, and everyone was kind of yelling, and there was what we thought the program was and what people thought it was going to be, and everyone had like a different idea, to include like the staff we were bringing in. We were just it was all on the fly, and so we butted heads a lot, and there was a lot of disagreements, and so yeah, initially it was pretty stressful, I would say, for me, definitely. And
all the while, are you still now working on soldiers when they're getting injured? They've got shins, and you're like,
Yeah, so I'm seeing patients every day, and then then I'm going up and talking to the command, and we're trying to organize getting the facility built and getting all this equipment to come in and hire staff. And yeah, like I said, it was long days, and it wasn't I don't really remember it with any like it wasn't a good time, but in the end it ended up being excellent, but initially
not a gray hair on your head. It's incredible.
Yeah. Sure. It was horrible. Yeah. As I said, I used to be 6'4", long flowing hair. And so, yeah.
Took it right out of you. What was your first objective when they said, all right, comprehensive care for special operational forces? What do you got?
Yeah. So initially, I just kind of looked at what could I take care of? And, we needed a facility. At that time, we were using, I think it was an old supply room, and it was under an HVAC system. And so I blame any like health issue I have for the rest of my life, the fact that I worked under an HVAC system for like 3 years. But there wasn't anything in there. I think there was like 4 Smith machines and like a leg press, and maybe 1 rusty barbell, and so we had to get rid of all that equipment. We had ordered all this equipment. We had some Mondo flooring put in, and so that was kind of my first initial objective. And then at this time, we were trying to hire some staff. And when I say me and the command, so I was working with the command, like who they wanted to bring in. And they had interviewed some people. And because of it, the government job, it was people that with veteran status that, were they weren't necessarily qualified for the coordinator position. Maybe they would have been a good strength coach or whatever, but for someone that we wanted to run a program, they didn't necessarily have the skills that we were looking for. And they had interviewed a few people before I had gotten there, and they had kind of taken these people out, but these people kept coming back in when we re-interview. And so we'd have to answer to why we couldn't hire these people with veteran status. And so it was painful, and it took a little while. And that's how we ended up getting a guy from the SEAL teams. We kind of did like a cross transfer. And so to answer your question, initially it was staffing, and then equipping the facility.
Right on. And then the PT came out. What do you think? Here's something that I think is fascinating about THOR that never gets enough credit is I have a friend that's working in the dietetics side of it. Was that brought on initially as well? Was that in conjunction with, or did this all pan out long over time?
So it was on the plan initially. They had thought what, with strength coaches, dietitians, physical therapists, with the long term being, some sports psych, a data analyst. And then when they started bringing in this POTF, which is pressure on the force and family, which is like a holistic thing, when they started bringing that in, then they started bringing in like sociologists, family counselors and that. But initially it was strength coaches, physical therapists, and the dietitian. And I would say, like, for us, we had a dietitian, and she came from the Olympic Training Center. Her name was Laura Anderson. And probably know from Baylor, we used to always make fun of the dietitians. You tell them like everything, like, oh, I ensure you'll give somebody Ensure, and so we had these dietitian I used to make fun of all the time. And then we had this dietitian came in and I didn't really know. I was like, well, what's she going to do? You know, like don't eat corn or something. And she came in and it was amazing. Like I changed lives and just, and, you know, I think it's like, well, you probably know too, with everyone thinks they know how to work out, right? Like everyone thinks they know how to exercise or what to do. And then, you know, everyone thinks they know how to eat properly. But then when you meet someone that truly understands it and truly understands athletic programming and like maybe the military side of things and tactically how to fuel the body. Yeah, I mean, guys were losing weight and they were gaining muscle and if they were performing better. And I used to say, you know, if we had to keep one person, we'd get rid of everybody except Laura, including myself, you know, because I feel like she was the one that was just really making a huge change. And so she moved on and there's a new gal in there, Kelsey, and she's doing a great job. And yeah, it's still just they're nonstop. They're busy all the time. So.
That's awesome that people are receptive to that because they have to want to hear it. People have to want to hear that they can't have supersonic burritos every day right before they go on the deployment.
So let's go back from like day one of inception when you had that project kind of plopped on your desk until you kind of left the project behind or you kind of retired from that side of things. How did that model of not only the physical preparedness, so it sounds like when you guys first got started, you really wanted to hit the physical side of things. You hired the strength coaches, the PTs, the nutritionists. How did that shift not only the physical side of things, but the mental readiness side of things as well? It sounds like you said later on they brought on more psychologists, family counselors, that side of things.
Yeah, and I think initially probably with the model based on D1 sports or professional sports and calling the soldier this like tactical professional athlete, and we brought these coaches in, well, it's a different animal, right? Like a soldier, even a great in shape SF dude or a ranger, it's not the same as a football player or a hockey player. And I think initially there was some confusion on how to train or what they expectations coming in, you know. So I worked with a guy and he was coming from Auburn. And, you know, I'm like, well, you know, you'll be surprised that we got this like chain smoking guy that's a little overweight, but he can throw, you know, 70 pounds on his back and he can go all day and then he can shoot on the range and he can do his job well and he can deploy. And, you know, he's like running himself into the ground and, you know, like he's not what you know, he takes his shirt off and, you know, everything's hanging over his, you know, his belt. But this guy can go hard all day long. And, you know, he's the guy you want to deploy with and you want to go to combat with, but he doesn't look like the athlete. And so I think initially maybe there was like a little shock and we had a little changeover of staff, you know, they're thinking like, well, I was going to go in and, you know, train these like Greek gods and, you know, it's just this like kind of chubby dude that gets after it or whatever. And so, so I think once we got in and they looked at the programming and what we could do and how it would look with op tempo and people going to the field or going on deployments or these other like J sets and how we could that, you know, they're there, then they're gone, then they're there and what that would look like. I think they were able to kind of start establishing the performance side of the house with the dietitian. And then the rehab has always been there because people always get hurt. So our side initially, you know, we've always been fairly busy, but I think where we were missing the gap was kind of circling back to performance or circling back to the dietitian. And then I think they always intended to bring on the mental health specialist or the sports psych. And I wasn't there when they brought him on. They brought him on after I left. And then when I came back as a contractor, you know, this sports psych, he's working with the CQB, like the close quarter teams, you know, he's going to the schools, he's touching every team and he's doing mental skills training and they're doing, you know, focus training, mindfulness stuff. And I think it's really from where I left the program in 2013 and then I came back in 2019 and in those, you know, 10 years, it was amazing just kind of the way that program had evolved into this sustainable, like thing that's going to be there for a long time. And so I don't know if I answered your question, but like, yeah, it's just, I think the intent was that it was always going to be, this kind of holistic approach, but I don't think we knew how we were going to get there until they started, kind of trudging down the road a little bit.
It's so comprehensive now. And it's very synonymous with, in my household with my broken 19th group husband, it's very synonymous with rehab for him, and then also training. And then the gyms have come, they're incredible, absolutely incredible on some basis now. So it's kind of cool to see kind of where that started and how it is now and how comprehensive and the amount and the breadth of resources available through THOR, which has been, that's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool little process.
Yeah. And people always resist it, anytime there's change, especially in the military, we've been trying to implement this new physical fitness test for, 5-6 years, and it's still not going to happen. And the problem is people are resistant to change, and we don't know how we're going to do it. And so when we brought the THOR3 program in, the Rangers had a program before that. It was called Ranger Athlete Warrior. And, guys would tell me, yeah, dudes hate the RAW program. And I'm like, guys would hate the THOR3 program. I'm like, oh, I hear it's just Olympic lifting. We haven't been there. So yeah, maybe they do some Olympic lifting, but are like, oh yeah, we don't do that. Or my team sergeant, we just run. And so there's always a little resistance, but I think if you can, if you build it and you keep bringing in teams, and then as we bring in younger people to the unit, and then that guy becomes a senior level medic, or he becomes like the intel guy on the team, and then he becomes a team sergeant. Well, he's grown up through the program. So for 11 years, this guy's been in the program. And so now he believes in it. He's selling it to, and so as things, they kind of snowball a little bit, and then people start to believe in it. So
I think that often people are resistant to what they're assigned or what's assigned to them too.
Yeah, that's
absolutely not. You told me to do it. And we've all seen that. Oh, you want me to do so? It's you got kids. They're like that as well. If you tell them to do it, it's got to be by their own goodwill. Yeah. And sometimes people act like that all the way into adulthood, myself included. So
yep.
Perhaps the way with the RAW program.
Somewhat tangential, but Mike and Annie had somewhat of a friendly bet here. I don't know how much is on the line, so you may be deciding some serious money handover right here. So, answer very carefully. So Mike and Annie had a little bet, and they were wondering, in your time working as a PT with the THOR3 program, what was the most common injury that you saw?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. So it would probably be a couple areas, but I would say back, shoulder, and knee would be the ones. And
Mike.
What Mike say?
That's fine.
None of us were
I was
right.
certain. I was certain we were going to medial tibial stress syndrome or something like that, just like shin pain.
Oh, no, we don't see that a whole lot because it's the SF dudes and because they've been going for a long time. I worked
know how to run.
Yeah, so I worked with during my internship. I did with the basic training at the Air Force, and we saw a ton of the stress syndrome. But we don't see it a whole lot. Maybe sometimes with the support guys, but even these guys these older guys, they've been pounding. They rock. They know how to get after it, and so that's the one thing they do fairly consistently. Even if they're not in the gym, they're out rucking or they're always out on the range, and so they're always on their feet. So we don't see a whole lot of stress syndrome, but we do see a lot of back stuff, a lot of shoulder stuff. Fairly common with the knee. And depending on the team guys or whatever, we see a lot of neck issues with people. I think it's just they're strapped into their body armor so much and they're wearing a helmet all day long, and it's just.
I said neck.
It's wearing them down.
Did you say neck? I don't know.
I said neck. I said
Mike, take it like a man. Fire up Venmo.
I don't know if you said. I think this is a push. I think we can count this as a push.
I think I said
no shin splints
hip
ever.
And neck. I said hip and neck.
You said two things. That's unreal. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of experience with that exact population, but even I did just a little bit of time over on Lackland with the TAC-P schoolhouse. And it seemed like for the 1 week that I was there, I was surprised at the shin splints that I saw. And I kind of figured, I was like, oh, I thought these guys would be ready to already good with this, but maybe it was because it was like, a training environment that was probably.
Well, I would agree, Mike. And if you look at that population, like the TACP population, is typically 18 to 20-year-old kids, kind of right off the street, and they haven't been on their feet a lot, they haven't been in. So, but if you're looking at the special forces population, it's usually guys in their late 20s, early 30s, and so that's why we don't see as much stress stuff. But like the TACP or like the PJs, all sorts of stress injuries with those guys, and so
for sure.
Okay, so I guess I won.
You did.
Yeah, Ryan, can we just edit the podcast out for all the parts wrong?
Yeah, we'll edit that, and I'm pretty sure we can piece together his voice to where it says. We'll take the future where he said shin splints, and we'll piece that back in.
Take what she said, just lower it a couple octaves. We just do a deep fake, and we move on. I have an image I have to uphold, so
do that. You go ahead, go match, perfect. So that kind of segues us over to working more with the civilian side of things and the most common injuries you see over there. So working in more of like a sports medicine setting, collaboration with more civilian-based institutions. What are we can call them injuries, we can call them syndromes, disorders, whatever you want to call them, that you probably see most common or that plague a large percentage of the population?
Yeah, so at the Hybl Center, we're doing a lot of collegiate athletes and these high school athletes. And so right now it's knee injuries, I would say, is the most common. Yeah. And so we did some testing on UCCS, which is we collaborate with the University of Colorado Springs. The Hybl Center does, and so we had the 400 and 800 meter track athletes in there. It was pretty interesting. We had them on a THOR3, which is like a motion capture system, 8-camera system. It's a markerless system. They go through, they squat, they do single leg squats and balance stuff, and then we put them on the treadmill. We have a force-plated treadmill, 3 cameras, and we had them run out there at their race pace. And them running at their race pace is just beautiful. It's like deer running. It's just so smooth, no deficiencies or whatever. But then when we have them squat or single leg squat, it looks like a baby giraffe, right? They're all over the place. They can't even squat correctly. These slow motions, they're really dysfunctional. There's a ton of asymmetries, and so I think that's the important part is like, if we can catch some of this stuff early, like, hey, this is the way you're moving. And so not necessarily when they're running at race pace, but if, at their training levels, they're probably creating a little bit of dysfunctions or a little bit of, stress on their knees or whatever. So at 19 and 20, it's not a big issue, but 2 or 3 years in their career, when they've been doing this year round, they're probably likely to develop some type of injury. And so for them, it's a lot of knee stuff. We don't really see a whole lot of back stuff with the younger population, sometimes shoulder stuff, but they're young. And so.
Go ahead, Annie. What were you going to say?
Yeah. Well, so I work primarily with tactical populations, in person, out of person. Then I also work at a college here in Washington, D.C. And something that I see a lot of is people have foundationally decent mechanics, and they don't know until they start going at a pretty decent clip how poorly they're going to move. And then you throw a ruck on it. And so I get a lot of injuries that people are just injured from, kind of some silly stuff, like not packing their ruck appropriately, so it's flying off their back in these weird, and maybe their running form kind of sucks, right? And so then they end up with a bunch of issues. And then this very strange subpopulation I've picked up is big dudes that have decided they want to run suddenly, and then I don't know why they always want to wear minimalist shoes, but I'm like, oh, you're not a minimalist dude though. We got to put some cushion on you. And so I'm getting quite a few people with shin splints. And when I start breaking it down, it seems as though the progression plans are bad. Like they're adding a ton of mileage because some is good, so a lot more is so much better, and they're not immediately in pain. So I'm seeing a lot of that. And then I see a lot of ruck-related injuries. And maybe it's people just rucking to no end, like overuse injuries. I guess that's what I would say I see a lot of.
Yeah, I would say we've done a troop school, just to your point, and we'll talk about movement, squat, single leg squat. And, we usually have everybody in the class stand up and squat. Well, everyone knows how to squat, right? Like, it's like you said, like I know what a perfect squat looks like, right? Like, so I get my hands out and I squat down and it looks great. But then if we have them do repeated motions, or we load them, or we do something like that, that's when the dysfunctions start to tweak out. And I think that's, as like a physical therapist or even like a performance coach, like we probably should look at what they're doing, so this guy can air squat when I tell him to, but then I put him under load and it's a train wreck, or, we put a ruck on him and it's a train wreck. And so I think that's probably more so where we should be looking, like more like this, functional type movement. And that's where we can probably tweak out where they're probably causing their stress and likely to injure themselves.
It seems so obvious when they're fatigued,
Yeah.
Getting them from the sake of being a strength and conditioning coach. Fatigue is something we avoid like the plague, right? Especially if they're in, so with athletes, they're in season, we don't fatigue. And then when I have tactical populations come through, we do. And that's where things start to pop up really well. So we have actually a really good track record at this university I'm at with tactical population kind of mitigation of injury, and then a terrible one with, not terrible, pretty average, but collegiate athletes just do get hurt. And it's because we aren't seeing them, the trained eye of somebody that's got a kinesiology background isn't really seeing them at their full fatigue until game day, which is pretty rough, but interesting. We gotta get them away from their one perfect squat. Anyone can squat perfectly. My own 63-year-old mother, beautiful one squat. 10 later, we're in this.
Oh.
So across a lot of the populations that you've worked with, and we've kind of talked about this on the podcast before, it seems like a lot of these injuries are very overuse related, doing too much when you're not ready for it. But I think from some of the things that you've talked about, you've mentioned more about like on the acute side of things, something just hits and goes, like under fatigue, something goes. So are there things that you implement in kind of your sports performance practice or your kind of sports medicine practice that like you go to limit those situations? Are you training them, getting them highly fatigued, and then having them do specific movements? What's kind of your coaching methodology when preventing this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think for us, it's a good warm up, right? And then that we're kind of moving through some of these motions with cues, and then I think people have to recognize when they move poorly and why they're moving poorly. And so, especially with the injured population, like no one. A person with back pain, it's been pretty rare where someone can hip hinge properly, right? And so I can't get them to hip hinge without them like flexing their lumbar spine or whatever. And so being able to cue that and be able to cue a proper squat, and then finding whatever their dysfunction is, right? As we're developing their plan, is it thoracic spine? Is it ankle range of motion? Is it their inability to hip hinge? And then putting that in as part of their kind of these little cues that they have during their own warm up, and that they know what it looks like, what a proper workout looks like. And that if they have form fatigue, to Annie's point, when they're under load, that they're stopping and maybe adjusting as opposed to pushing through the workout at that time.
Yeah, I like that. So, and we've got some kind of some flashback questions here for you. Ready? So you ready for some flashbacks?
Sure.
All right. So we're flashing back to the day that THOR3 Project gets dropped on your desk, and you can whisper yourself, Twitter format here, 150 characters or less. You can whisper some Twitter format advice in your own ear. What are you going with? What are you going to tell a young Jason Mitchler?
I think if I could do it again, I think there was a lot of competing bodies. So USASOC had a THOR3 team that had a agenda or a plan, and then the group that I worked for had a plan. The higher command, that controlled the group had a command, and then my THOR3 team had a plan. And so it was a lot of competing going on, and there was a lot of conflict, because what USASOC was pushing out from Fort Bragg, our command was saying, well, that's not going to happen. We're going to do this or that, and this is what we want it to be. And then I'm down there, I'm saying like, well, then we're not going to get this funding or whatnot. And so if I could go back, I would have set more firm kind of guidelines, like how we're moving forward. This is the rules, right? And this is how we implement the program. This is what the program is. And then phased it out so that if you don't have command support, then the program's always going to falter for a while. But if I can get the company commanders and even the team leaders on board, and then definitely like the battalion commanders on board, that they're pushing this program. And I think I was just overwhelmed, and I didn't communicate enough kind of what THOR3 was and how we could help. And maybe just take the guidelines from USASOC at Fort Bragg and just go with whatever the local command is going with. It all worked out in the end, it just caused me a lot of stress, but and I would buy a bunch of wine, Ryan. That's what I'd do.
Took some years off the lifespan, but worth it in the end.
Yeah. So,
but I actually wanted to ask you, when you first got the project, I'm sure that you had a hit of stress. Of course, you were like, holy crap, how am I going to do this? But I'm sure you had like a hit of excitement too. And you were like, wow, like this is what I want this to be. So like, what was before anyone else had any influence on you, what was kind of your mission statement for it? This is what I personally want to get out of this.
Yeah, so I was excited because I was going back to group, and so I had missed it. And so my thought is that I was going to be a part of this thing, building this huge, comprehensive program. And so for me, it was exciting, but I wanted it to be like a sustainable program that we could make top level operators throughout their whole career, right? So that guys weren't just coming in and just going hard for 15, 20 years and then retiring, just like put out the pasture because they're so broken down. And so my thought was that we could develop this comprehensive, like holistic program that was sustainable, that everyone would buy into, and that we would have some measurable changes that we could, kind of sell to everybody. And so I mean, it was a little probably optimistic initially, but I think it's getting there. It's just everything moves so slowly with the military, but I definitely think it's working that way. And the people, Paul Goldberg, he's in charge of 10 Special Forces, and over the last 10 years, it's just been amazing, kind of how they've progressed the program and what they've done. And yeah, I was proud to be a part of it, and I'm proud to have started kind of that part. But yeah, it's really grown since I've left it. So.
It's a huge accomplishment. Huge. I have a question from the audience. The audience. What would you say the split is between how we word in this? I've got a few questions from the audience.
Okay, here we go.
Split on the injuries that you worked with during your time with the teams between dumb injuries and duty-related injuries.
Okay, let me pull this. Let me pull this up real quick here. So,
man came prepared with numbers, and I love it.
Yeah,
so the data.
So the last time I was deployed, I kept a tracker on injuries, kind of where the area was, who they were, and then kind of what the mechanism of injury was. So for 34% of the injuries, they just woke up with pain, right? And so to me, that was probably like some stress, like they were riding in a vehicle for a long time or whatnot, or they were sitting around all day and they've been kind of used to moving around. 25% was working out. And so,
no.
Yeah. So, so guys go down range and they're
out
like,
or maxing out.
Yeah. So that's funny. Yeah. So like I saw a guy with a THOR pack because, he was maxing out on his bench, and it's like, the joke is 315 isn't going to bench itself. So you got to get out there and get after it, but guys are like, yeah, I'm so glad I'm on deployment. I'm going to get in shape. And so they're working out twice a day, and they're doing combatives and all this stuff. And yeah, so we saw like a ton of so 25% working out, and then 5% was combatives, probably 11% running injuries, they called it. 16% work, which would be like them lifting something, like moving something around. 6% sports, which is kind of low. Usually, we see like organization day in the Army is a huge kind of injury thing. And then only 2% were combat related injuries. So,
oh my.
Oh no.
Oh no. That is not what we wanted to hear.
Yeah. But, it's like, I always look at it like if a guy gets hurt working out, as long as it's something that, like a pec tear, that's probably not too awesome. But, something else like tweaked his knee or back. We had a guy just completely blow out his knee during combatives. He was doing some jiu-jitsu stuff. And it's like that stuff's not great because it takes the guy off deployment and it's bad for everybody. Like the guy, when I say guy, I mean whoever it is, right? Like male or female, like with that, they don't want to necessarily, for the most part, everyone I met, they don't want to leave the deployment. They're pissed off that they got hurt, and then they have to figure out how they're going to go without this individual while they're gone. And so, but if it's just like a tweak or a back thing, like, well, that's why we're there, right? We can get them back in the fight and kind of provide some skills. And, I feel like there's some risk to working out, but, it's better than us being like big, jars of Jello that we're walking around. And so,
right. Not very imposing.
Yeah. So,
what about beer-related injuries? Any of those?
Would you say?
What about beer-related injuries?
Beer-related injuries? Yeah. So deployed, I can't speak to those. Yeah. So
0% of those actually. 0%. Incredible.
You said your husband's 19th group, right? So he could tell you some stories. So.
Well, that's where I'm coming from. That's exactly where this came from.
Okay. Yeah. I won't mention any of those, but yeah, there's probably some of those out there.
We won't mention it. We won't mention it.
Yeah. It's probably better. Yeah.
What do you think is so it's great for me. It's been great for me. I've been kind of entrenched in the tactical population strength and conditioning sector since 2014. And it's been awesome, but I had to go the route of doing contract work and being at Fort Bragg and just doing the work on that side, and then finally being able to break off and be private. But now it's real hot. It's real hot to be a tactical performance coach. Yeah. So as you're seeing things, what do you think is the most misguided training advice you've seen?
That we have to train in our gear, right? Like that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be it, right? So that I have to put all this crap on and clean or something, like do cleans or like do some, weird carry. And, when I was first at group, we had a guy and he was a strength coach and, he really bought into this. He called it like Tactical Thursday or something like that. And I hated it because, he would have guys get their gear on, they're slinging ammo cans around. I'm like, me personally, like being able to do a heavy clean or a kettlebell swing when I'm not at work, I'd rather do that than to get in all my work gear and throw a stupid ammo can around that I hate anyways. And so like, I think mentally it's better to separate the two. And then guys they end up getting injured, at Fort Benning, they would put people in like body armor and then they'd run them and, they'd have them do all these burpees and body armor. And these kids are in the officer candidate school. So they're right out of, they're right off the street. And then we're just like crushing them. Like, well, why are they running in body armor when they can't even run, like a decent run time on their own? I'm like, let's just take a sledgehammer and beat their knees now. And so we don't have to like worry about it later. And so it's frustrating. So, but yeah, that's what I would say. Like, but the misconception is that we have to, like kind of like train like you fight. We don't have to exercise like you fight. Like there's two different things. And so that's what I would say it was.
It's odd because no one else thinks that way. Like nobody, the NFL doesn't say, here's a football in the weight room, catch it between, it doesn't happen. Nor does NASA say, where's your space suit? Get in it. Like that's not a thing. And then from a perspective of becoming faster and stronger, you certainly don't get faster by running slower than you're capable. Like that's certainly that's no strategy I'm aware of.
Or to create shin splints by running in your boots. And so.
But man, did Nike start capitalizing on making those real sick military-inspired run boots.
Oh yeah, no, they're nice. I've done some rucks in them. I really like them. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that was good. That's a solid marketing idea.
Yeah.
Good job, Mike. Good job, Mike.
Do they have a pretty good marketing team?
Nike?
I'm not sure.
Oh, shut up, Ryan.
All right. What's our next question from the audience?
The next one, I have no shortage. So it turns out,
No
Jason,
shortage.
you're in the hot seat because every person my husband's ever served with is here this weekend and this week for the inauguration. So we're good. We're solid. So I got quite a few questions from the audience, from the peanut gallery here. So let's see, we've got, what would be one piece of advice you'd have for somebody that's preparing for the SFAS or the Q course or a ruck-based selection?
Yeah. So I was thinking about that, and kind of like how I would, one of the other questions was like, how would I change my career, and what would I do? And I think if I could do it again, or if I was going to advise someone how to go to SFAS or whatever assessment they were going to, like it would be to get an initial assessment, go to a coach and get, where am I deficient in it? Am I deficient aerobically? Am I deficient strength wise? Am I deficient in loaded carriage? And then have someone build me a plan based around that. The plan to just like go out and get after it every day, it doesn't work for most of the population. And that's why we end up with these stress injuries, right? Like guys just think like, well, I rucked 3 miles today. I ruck 4 tomorrow, 5. That's my progression. And I think if we had an assessment, bigger guys or strong guys, they probably need to work more like on their aerobic conditioning, or, these wiry guys that, can run forever. Well, they maybe need a little strength-based stuff. And so, but I think doing a basic assessment, and you could probably pull something off the internet, but I think having a coach to talk you through it and maybe explain a little bit would probably be worth its weight before you go and you start training something with an actual plan. THOR3 has some plans on the internet, which are decent, but I still think like people need to understand like where they're coming from before they start pushing towards like one of these goals, as far as like, especially if you're going to be rocking like a ton of times like you are in SFAS. So.
Yeah, we talk a lot, and I'm not going to let Ryan say it first, but about a needs analysis. Always running needs
my
analysis.
Word, come on, my face.
I know that's
how I sound smart on these things, and you just take it from me. Now I just have to sit here like an idiot. It's because of the Nike comment.
I tell you, the most heartbreaking news I ever give people is that they don't need to actually bench anymore or squat. Yeah. And I've had some people that have, elite powerlifting totals. I'm like, that's kind of over. Like you are not going to pass your 2 mile of any sort. Like I hate to tell you, but that we have to shelf. I mean, and there's usually a happy medium, but that's
we've evolved over time, So if you look at like take the Rangers in the 90s, they were these wiry, 5'9", 5'10", 160-pound guys that could go all day long. And now if you look at them nowadays, they're big, muscular, beefy guys. And we used to joke, the thought is everyone always says, oh, what if this guy goes down? Who's going to carry him out? That's why we're saying like we need these big beefy guys, and like who's going to carry this 220-pound guy out if he goes down, and so that's why we need to be strong or be able to carry someone out. Like I get that part, but that doesn't happen a whole lot. But what does happen is we run in, we clear a room, we run, we clear another room. We run, we clear another room, we run across a compound, we run and clear, it's like, if I'm a huge dude and I'm clearing multiple rooms, I'm dying, right? And then how efficient or how effective I am at the end of like clearing, 4 floors of rooms when I haven't had to carry anyone out of the room though, but so that's my thought is like, and that's the whole needs analysis and where are we deficient and how can we improve, when we're looking at this kind of general conditioning. Right.
I think that when people look upon the profession from an outsider's perspective, they really do see like the Hollywood extreme version. And they don't realize how much aerobically taxing work there is to be done in the most mundane way.
Yeah.
And how not very many bodies are getting carried around. Thank God, right? So thank you that we're not just the disposal team, but like that's just not quite what we're preparing for, is dragging out your enormous 225-pound friend, which also maybe don't be 225 pounds, be easier to run around with,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Won't have to worry about it so much. Another question we've got here is training. What strategy have you seen working for training around scheduling autonomy? Like, people don't have autonomy of schedule. In a perfect world, they'd have a beautiful plan, but they just ain't got it.
Yeah. So I think that kind of falls in with the whole needs analysis and where's my focus, right? So if if we're out in the field and we can't train for so many days, and then we have some time to train. Well, where's my priority? What do I need to focus on? What's gonna kind of what am I going to lose faster? Am I going to lose strength faster, or am I going to lose aerobic capability faster? In which aerobic capability I'm going to lose faster, and so like I probably need to just have a little priority, especially with the military population. We'd go on these long trips, and then we don't really have the ability to. We can't run, right? You can't do any aerobic stuff, but you could do some type of circuit or something like that, and get after it a little bit. Even if you're just using water cans or whatnot, but maintaining and trying to sustain a little bit when you're under these kind of tough situations, I think would be good. So prioritizing what your needs are and kind of where your personal needs are, and then being able to recognize when you do have time to train, some of the small stuff you can do that can sustain, like they say, like Tabatas can sustain you, aerobically, anaerobically, in, what's it take, 4 minutes if you push it hard enough. And so I don't know if I answered your question, but that's my thought is.
No, that's good. Really, a lot of these are also just words people need to hear from someone other than me barking it at them. Like, put it down. You don't really need that. Another thing I wouldn't mind, now that I'm thinking about it, do you think that rest days are important in recovery in general, Jason?
Yeah. So my thought would be too is, you hear it a lot, like when we work out, we don't work out hard enough, and when we rest, we don't rest, right? We're doing something like it's
middle ground, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like middle ground. We're just always like kind of hanging out there, and that's why I think having the THOR3 folks and with like an actual program where they're programming in rest days and you're listening to that, and you're talking through that, can make a big difference, especially as people go through their career. And in your 20s and early 30s, you can probably get away with it, but you get up in your 30s and 40s, and it starts paying, and you start paying for it a little bit. So
yeah. So when your coach says to have a rest day, you should probably have a rest.
You probably should have a rest.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you, Jason. I got you.
Never.
Ryan, by the way. Also,
here's a question for you.
Oh no, Mike's coming.
Mike's in.
Oh, yeah, I'm here. Yeah. No, so I don't know if you spend a lot of time online. If you don't, I wouldn't recommend it. But apparently, like, manual therapy sucks and is bad. And as a fellow Baylor bro, I'm sure you probably know that this is false and patently absurd. So I guess just coming from someone who's been around a while, do you have any thoughts on that? When I've deployed, I found it really powerful for those like really acute injuries, and I think it's like misguided to throw stuff like that out, even like modalities and stuff, frankly, which it doesn't have the same staying power as exercise, etc. But we're talking about people need to like go out and like fly a mission or go out on patrol or something like that. What's the problem with that? You know what I mean? So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on manual therapy and just kind of open up to you.
I think where the issue comes in is that people start to use it as a crutch, like this whole dry needling, it's like, well, I have to get dry needled weekly, otherwise, or I have to get my back cracked, or I need manual therapy on my knee weekly. And I think us as physical therapists, that's probably where we're missing out, is we're not educating, like, hey, if you require physical therapy weekly for 4 years, well, you're not in physical therapy. Yeah, we're not doing what we need to do. And But I think it's a huge tool, right? Like, so, we're talking about like someone has a dysfunctional movement, like they can't squat or they can't raise their arm overhead. And then we can do some manual therapy and increase that range of motion. We free up that dysfunctional movement. And then we have them own that movement with exercise. Well, it's so effective, right? Or someone's going out, and if someone's like their thoracic spine's locked up, and then we're going to put them in body armor and put a ruck on them, and then they're going to go walk around for 4 hours. But if we can free up that motion, give them some stuff to do with some manual therapy, and then we'll go out, I think we're going to limit kind of like their issues in the long term. So no, I think it's really effective. My only issue is if we start to use it as kind of like this all the time crutch. But no, it's certainly like, and that, I think that's the point of it, right? Like, so if we're doing it, a couple weeks, and then we're giving people to work on it and things to work on with it, and they're owning that movement, and then as they move forward, then they require less of it. But it certainly can be effective, and it can certainly keep people in the fight. And so,
For sure.
It seems like there's a cycle of relevance where people learn about some modality of soft tissue therapy, and then they fall in love with that thing, and they don't stop doing it, and then they take it to this extreme, and then somebody on the internet will go, you don't need to Theragun yourself, for 40 minutes every day, or you need dry needling 6,000 times, and then there's a wave of like, actually I screwed myself up with go figure a bunch of percussion type therapy, and it sucks. And then there's like this pendulum of like, hey, it's actually pretty effective in these reasonable doses down here. And then I guess reasonable doses is where it gets out of hand. People get out of hand with it.
Right. Yeah. And, and I get it, guys come in and they're hurting and they want to just feel better. And so like, that's why they're coming to physical therapy anyways. And so they don't want to be told like, well, I'll do this, but then I need you to do whatever, X, Y, Z. And over time, like, I think if we can get a little buy-in, then we can educate them more so as why we're doing the manual therapy, and then why we shouldn't be doing it for, why they should be like Theragunning themselves or foam rolling themselves for 2 hours before they work out. Well, I don't know what you're doing, but it's not what you need to be doing. And so,
or just smashing the shit out of them.
Yeah.
I need 2 barbells over the bicep.
Yeah.
So when I worked at UCF, they had this thing where they would roll their IT bands with 1/2-inch thick PVC before each workout, and they would just be mashing each other, pushing each other down on the pipe. Like, what are we getting out of this? Where are we going with this? Yeah. What is the outcome that we're looking for? And all I could ever get, and it was funny because Max Ada, who works at Juggernaut, weightlifting coach, he was talking about the same things. Like, people just go with like, oh, I'm releasing the muscle. Like, okay, go one step further. Explain to me what that means when you say releasing the muscle. Is the muscle in prison? What are we going with here? And it's the same thing with, mashing with the lacrosse ball. I'm activating I saw this on Instagram the other day, a guy Theragunning his abs. I'm activating my abs before I go train him at the gym today. And that's when, like what Annie said, that's when the pendulum comes and swings back, and people say, oh, that shit is stupid. You should not be doing that. It's like, no, we got to be hanging out in that middle ground. There's a use for it. It's probably not what you're doing with it. It's probably better served with someone who has like DPT after their name. Let's keep it there.
Yeah.
Or at least softly, like I love the releasing the muscle. Yeah, detach it. Go ahead and just sever it. Where else do we
sing it?
What's next? Amputate the muscle. It's gone. It's done.
Breaking up the gristle, right? That's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it.
Something that Annie has enlightened me to since joining the team is that in the world of tactical strength conditioning, tactical performance, there is no shortage of absurd exercises that people do. They like to just do the strangest of exercises. So the question that we wanted to finish with today was, I wanted to ask you get the chance, you get to eliminate one dumb exercise that maybe you've seen in your past. No one is ever allowed to do it again, punishable by death. What's going to be that exercise?
Yeah, so I had to think about this, but I was thinking burpees, that I would go with burpees just because they're so abused, it's just, it's rarely that you see it being done effectively, and it's usually when people are fatigued, and I was telling you at Fort Benning, we saw, I saw this young female raging ridic for doing 100 burpees in body armor, and she can do 100 burpees normally, and so we're putting her in body armor and doing it. And I get it, they suck and they're hard, but like, I don't really know what the function is of them. And it's usually abused. So yeah, if you got rid of those, I wouldn't mind. So
burpees are out. I think everyone can agree to that. I don't think anyone's
on the hot seat.
So I'm currently in prep for this year's Open, and I saw that Castro either tweeted or posted on an Instagram post or something, and the quote was like, hashtag CrossFit Open, who doesn't love burpees? So I'm thinking that we're going to be burpeeing heavily.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Like what's the intent there other than for it to suck and be hard and get your heart rate way up? When you see burpees on a workout, you're like, all right, there's the section of the workout that I don't know, have to survive through. I'm not getting anything out of it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think it's just such an abused movement. If you watch people do it, it's just sloppy, and, they're just kind of flexing everywhere, ragdolling down into it. And so I just hate them.
It's like the high school football equivalent is like up downs. Everyone's been bad. All right, time to do our up downs.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Love it. Awesome.
All right, gang. Is there anything that we wanted to circle back to? Any questions that were left on the table? Burning questions on their mind that you cannot live without answering? Annie, Mike, speak now. Forever hold your peace.
I think we all saw me win the debate earlier. Oh, you know what? One more.
We did.
Injuries when you were at the Pentagon, were they different?
They were. So it was an older population. So, probably the average rank was colonel and above. And so it tended to be like some, like just sitting. So I probably did see more neck there. Yeah. So probably more neck and issues, just
2 for 2.
Shoulder issues there, just because of people sitting at a computer all day long and stress. I treated a ton of neck there. And so, but I would say too, that they were a lot more responsive. That population was pretty responsive. And so because they didn't have time to come down to the clinic. So, they were like, just tell me what to do. And they were pretty responsive to what they did. And so, it was a good job.
Were you in Arlington at that time, or?
I lived in Burke, Springfield area, West Springfield.
Yeah. Mike's got some family there. I live in McLean, but.
Oh, yeah. Loved it. Yeah, it was a good place. A little busy, but it's good. Yeah.
A little hot this week, but I think I'm gonna give it a couple more weeks before I throw the towel on it. Very cool.
All right, Jason.
It's been my favorite because I won this whole podcast.
Two of them. You were
Twice.
2 for 2. Double up the bet, Mike. That's what is that? $400, I think, was the agreement.
It got stolen from me. Just
Stop the count. Stop the count.
Yeah.
I think that concludes the reasonable questions that don't have beer in them from the old notebook here. So
Perfect. Love it. Jason, let the people know where they can find you if they want to reach out for any of your resources, buy things from you, just generally give you money. Where would they find you at?
Yeah, so if you're interested, I'm Jason Mitchler on Instagram, but I'm not selling anything. So but if you have any questions, you can contact me. That's how Annie found me. So, but
there it is.
Yeah, Jason's very receptive on Instagram and very, very knowledgeable on the subject. So it's been awesome to have you on, Jason. Thanks for coming on. We really, really appreciate it. Thanks for spreading your knowledge to everyone here. 1, listen to your coach. 2, don't do burpees in your combat gear or anything like that. And 3, we're going to circle back to it. Listen to your coach again.
Perfect.
As always, this has been the Gifted Performance Podcast. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, do all of those YouTube things because the algorithm stays fucking your boy. And we will see you on the next one, guys. As always, stay gifted. See ya.